Thank you for joining us. I'm Richard Peritz, and our show today is another in our series on health and nutrition. Our guests today are Brian Clement, the co-director of the Hippocrates Institute in Palm Beach, Florida, and Mr. Bill Faloon, co-founder of the Life Extension Foundation. They will share their views on this essential subject following these messages.
Hello, my name is Dave. I am a face of ALS. I'm here at the Gardens Wellness Center. There's a couple reasons why we're here. Number one, we're seeking holistic treatment and acupuncture treatments to prepare me for stem cell therapy coming up.
My experience with Gardens Wellness Center has definitely been life-changing.
I love Gardens Wellness.
I love Gardens Wellness Center.
For more information or a free consultation, call us at 561-422-4330.
Rejuvenate your skin from the inside out and the outside in. With 98.6% naturally derived ingredients, you experience vibrant skin from day one. Introducing the Alavita Regenerating Trio, a moisturizing and anti-aging solution. These three innovative products reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. Alavita, a beautiful merging of nature and science. Learn more online today.
Oh, it was beautiful, magical. And then they showed me a world where I could be so dependable. Oh, intellectual, cynical.
Find magic again. Sprout by HP. With Intel RealSense technology inside, now you can bend the rules of creativity outside.
With us now are Brian Clement and Bill Faloon. A real privilege to have you on the show.
So nice to be here.
Bill, good to have you back as always. I just saw this presentation you just delivered. It was just superb, excellent. And it reminds me of something. This is going to date our conversation. I once interviewed someone who was president of the AMA.
Oh, yes.
And this gentleman, much to the horror of the establishment, turned his back. He was a medical doctor. And he wrote a book called Confessions of a Medical Heretic.
My good friend.
Robert
Yes,
Mendelsohn.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we have some common pals. Tell us a little bit about your presentation today.
Well, I'm privileged to direct the world's oldest residential natural health center, Hippocrates Health Institute. And today I spoke about longevity and the tools we've learned to adopt to prevent premature aging, as well as disease. And forget only the prevention, even reversing diseases today. What's stunning is last month I was in Europe and we did a conference at an important medical school in Lithuania. And what we brought there to Europe is that here the CDC now has agreed that 80% of all diseases can be reversed with lifestyle. So that's what we spoke about today. And people should know that.
Fascinating. So many advances in medicine and healthcare. Bill, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, this really represents going back to the basics, the incorporation of natural, healthy foods in your diet, and then purging your diet of the foods that are killing Americans. The meats, the dairies, the sugars. We know from peer-reviewed published studies that these food groups are killing Americans prematurely. And the presentation tonight reviewed the data showing that if you eat the right foods, your risk of chronic disease is dramatically reduced. And if you have chronic disease already, it can be reversed.
The difficulty in the research community is that most of the monies that are put into research are really to produce products for the pharmaceutical industry, for the food industry, et cetera. But in spite of that, there's a global outreach now that has been looking at lifestyle and diet and other methodologies, the epigenetics as we spoke tonight, even what your attitude has to do with your health and your longevity. Now when you start to look at all of that information and data that's coming in, As an example, just on food alone, the World Health Organization realized that most governments wouldn't have the courage or the ability to come out and say to the meat industry, by the way, what you're feeding our people is giving them cancer.
What's interesting is men who have prostate cancer, who are effectively treated for the primary tumor, if they continue eating a dairy-laden diet, if they continue their high sugar intake with their milk, the cheese, the meat, if they continue doing that, their risk of a recurrence is 2.5-fold greater than if they just cut back those toxic foods and ate a more sensible diet. So even if you already have contracted cancer, there's so much that can be done to reduce your risk of a recurrence if you have it in remission or a complete response by altering your dietary habits.
If the scientific community is completely aware of all of this, which I absolutely believe is the case, why is this continuing?
Well, I'm not really sure that they want to be aware of it. I think the literature is available. I read it. You can read it. We can today look at the internet. But the fact is, if you're in research, you must be in denial unless you want to start to be a truth teller. And there's no money in being a truth teller today. So the industries that literally promote research, it wouldn't be to their advantage to tell you not to buy their product. So you are correct that it's available. I think we're incorrect in assuming that most researchers know what we're talking about here. Why do most doctors continue to do treatments that have proven not to work? Because they're in denial and they constantly repeat the same thing. So what we should be doing is changing the educational process, changing the institutions, and bringing lifestyle in. As a matter of fact, 5 years ago when I was in Europe, I challenged a major medical school after they buttered us up. And they said, you're wonderful and the Institute is great and for 60 years you've done great work. And I said, well, if we're so great, why are you teaching the same old thing in this medical school? And literally a week later, unlike here in the United States, it would never have happened. I got a call and they said, we're interested. And this year, September of this year, the world's first lifestyle medical degree is being offered in Lithuania. And by the way, in Lithuania, to become a medical doctor or a lifestyle medical expert with a master's degree, you can do it for 1/10 the price, and it's taught in English. And by the way, if you happen to be from that wonderful country, it's free. And so we have a problem because everything's manipulated by control, money, and corporate interest today.
You mentioned the scientific community, Richard. The fact of the matter is the peer-reviewed published literature is rather consistent, that if you consume a healthy diet, your risk of contracting cancer, stroke, heart disease, diabetes, dramatically reduced. You don't see a lot of contradictions in the scientific literature. The trouble is no one is putting it all together in a ways for the public to understand that there are healthy ways to eat and there are extremely dangerous foods that should be avoided. The heavily cooked meats, the dairy, the high glycemic diets that are pretty much routine in the average American's lifestyle, it's killing them prematurely. And yet the data supports a healthy, prudent diet that is not that challenging to follow if you have the will to make it happen.
Inadvertently, we do human studies. As an example, I was at Jackson Memorial 6 years ago. I'm sitting in the room with the president of the pediatric hospital. The woman across from me literally has probably saved 1 million lives. She created a vaccine that you inject into women with AIDS so their babies do not come out with AIDS. And the woman sitting next to me, who is also a PhD nutritionist, said to me, yes, yesterday we finalized a study with Haitian children. After 1 year, school year, of them moving from Haiti, where they're underfed, but they're exercising, they have the same level of diabetes that American-born children have. 1 year of eating our school lunches, 9 months, 10 months in school, they have the same level of diabetes that others. There's no diabetes virtually in Haiti. Well, you're going to say they're starving, but what's better, starving or dying of diabetes? I'm not sure.
Well, there's no question it doesn't take a long time. In fact, just a couple weeks of eating the typical junk food American diet results in major changes in biomarkers of heart attack risk, inflammation, cancer. It's not like you can cheat a lot and eat healthy a couple of days out of the month. Every day you're eating the toxic junk food out there, you are prematurely aging yourself.
Did you see the recent study that was amazing where they looked at fatty livers? Now, if you had asked me a year ago, how long does it take to establish a fatty liver, a disease? I would say, oh, probably several years. 7 days. First they had animal studies, then they went to human studies. 7 days of consuming large amounts of sugar create fatty liver, which kills you, by the way. I lost a brother, a baby brother at 50 years old he was, to fatty liver disease. Why? His favorite place was the refrigerator in the kitchen.
Please tell us about what you lectured today regarding sprouts.
Today I was speaking about germinated nuts, seeds, grains, and beans. You'd call them sprouts. And I had the privilege back in 1976 and 77 to work with the United Nations. And we went into Egypt at that point and to India. And right now we're looking at a project in Chad at the refugee camps where children have lived there for 1 generation now, where we bring in 100 pounds of seeds. Now these are surplus seeds you buy from developed countries for pennies, basically. For every 1 pound of seed, you produce 10 pounds of incredibly nutritious food, complete proteins, the highest levels of vitamins, the highest levels of minerals, and most important, phytonutrients that are the most important medicine ever discovered by man. If you look at the work that's been done on phytochemicals, pharmaceutical medicine, herbal medicine, homeopathic medicine are paled by the medicine that nature has in it itself in the plant. And when we start to use these, which we do on a daily basis at Hippocrates Health Institute, now we have the data and the statistics, and in our case, the human research, clinical research, to show that this particular sprout that everyone can afford, this levels a field, you don't have to be wealthy for this, you don't have to buy it in an expensive store, it's a seed, works with heart disease. This particular one works with blood sugar. This particular one works with cancers. And we don't have to invent what is best for the human body. Nature has already done that. We have to humble ourselves and recognize the brilliance of nature.
What's interesting about sprouts, by the way, is they're automatically organic.
Exactly.
They just popped out of the ground, so no one needed to spray any fertilizer or any of the pesticides and herbicides around them. And they do contain in abundant amounts of these phytochemicals that have proven anti-cancer properties. So you can eat a lot of broccoli after it's matured, or you can eat a smaller amount of the sprouts and get a lot more of these beneficial phytochemicals.
Yes, as we mentioned today, 50 times more. So broccoli is delicious, fantastic. Take the sprout, the same seed that created that broccoli sprig. It's 50 times richer in these medicines that reverse cancers and ulcers.
I love broccoli. Bill, you're also interested in many other areas of research into longevity and health. Share with our audience, please.
Well, what the Life Extension Foundation is focusing in on now is reversing the aging process. Now, if you're following a poor diet and you get on a healthy diet, you'll have a partial reversal of aging. There'll be beneficial changes, but at some point, you're going to run out of time. Yes. We are seeking to extend that period of time rather dramatically through stem cell interventions that have not yet been studied in humans, but in the animal model have reversed biological aging. We're hoping to launch a study in West Palm Beach over the next year that will involve stem cell mobilized plasma from young donors, putting that into elderly individuals in an attempt to reverse the aging process analogous to what's seen in the laboratory model. Absolutely correct. And a good friend of ours and colleague that works with us in the conquest of catastrophic disease, Dr. Maharaj, yes, is phenomenal on this. And what I love about him, he's a brilliant, brilliant man, but he can sit with any of us and make us understand why it would work like this. As a matter of fact, he would take a person who has an average knowledge about this, and by the time you left that room 30 minutes later, you'd know exactly why you could prevent premature aging, and by the way, prolong life. The biggest killer of all is stress. And if we can get into that place of calm and comfort, that's going to be the real kink. So combining all of these things, I'm a big fan of.
I happen to be a vegetarian, but under great stress all the time.
A stress bag.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
Bill, what kind of cooperation or lack of cooperation is extended to organizations such as yours and yours? From the standpoint of the organizations, I think they work nicely together.
Unfortunately, the medical authorities in this country are bought and paid for by pharmaceutical interests. So the government and the big pharmaceutical companies would prefer that we just go away, because if we did, a lot more people would fall ill and need expensive prescription drugs. Few of them produce the benefits people desire. They almost all produce undesirable side effects.
It's a little more evil. He's being polite. We have actually found the people in Washington, D.C., former military, and a fellow that used to be part of Ralph Nader's Raiders back in the 60s and 70s. There's 500 organizations. He's right at the top of the list, his organization. We're right up there about number 25. That they now have trolls. The new way that they have warriors is they're paying millions of dollars and independent. So we have the pharmaceuticals, we have the food industry, the Monsantos of the world, you have the soda industries that literally have these, quote, geniuses on the computer. Their entire job is to sabotage him. So they're going to make stories up. They're going to, for instance, they came after my credentials. They said I was pretending to be something I'm not. Thank God the state of Florida came in, dropped the entire thing. But if you look at the internet, that's what you see. You don't see that it was dropped. You would see that I'm a bad guy and I'm hurting people. The same thing with him. I mean, your organization had that wonderful museum. Tell about that. I love that.
We set up a museum to expose the atrocities committed against the health of the American public by the incompetent and corrupt Food and Drug Administration. It did us a favor. It got us international publicity. We were able to educate the world that our government is corrupt when it comes to health care and what they recommend. So we had a lot of battles in our early days. We were raided by the government. Our products were seized. We went into court. We won them back. And it's interesting, as you mentioned, the internet, they don't always mention the victories. They often say, well, the government did this to you, so you must have been doing something wrong. And yet, when you prevail in court, that's not headline news.
But the problem is that not every organization has the economics that your organization has, and frankly, mine has. So what happens is the vast majority of people that they attack go down, and you never know about it. And he had the will and the economics to fight. What happens to the 80% or 90% that do not have that?
This is really fascinating, but we have to take this pause for a commercial break. We'll be right back. We're back with Brian Clement and Bill Faloon. A question our audience would like to know an answer to is, what else is being suppressed? What is the government not allowing the public to know?
Well, first let me define, when we say the government, our government today is corporations that literally pay for politicians, put them in their pocket and completely control. This is no longer a republic or a democracy. This is a corporate interest that we have. So it's not the government, they're the puppets of the corporation. So why are the corporations doing this to us? For profit, for control, for manipulation, and I actually think it could go as far as weeding the population. Now with that said, today they are intentionally putting genetic modified organisms into our food. They are trying to prevent us from knowing that we have genetically modified food. They're going to lose this battle. And why? Because major food industries at this point have gotten off the bandwagon and said, we are going to only use non-genetically modified food. Now, they have themselves into hot water because 95% of all corn, 97% of all soy is genetically modified in the United States now. And they're trying to say it's safe. Last week, they came out and said, this is perfectly safe. Look at the New York Times last week. They investigated the 12 members that said it was fine. Everyone is on the payroll of Monsanto, who makes genetically modified food. So I think the public sentiment today is that they are skeptical about a lot of things, and they're no longer buying and believing that somebody's out to protect them. But in fact, it's not the government doing this to us, it's who's controlling the government. And of course, the government officials are unscrupulous to allow this to happen. Other things are happening, and I'm going to throw the ball to you.
Well, on top of everything you've said are stifling regulations that are impeding. They are impeding medical research. Our Life Extension Foundation is initiating right now a pancreatic cancer study at a prestigious medical facility in Southern California. We saw our first patient in 2016. That study was conceived in 2010. It took about 5 years just to push a clinical study through the FDA's regulatory hurdles. That's a process that needs to be stopped, that they mandate so much paperwork and so much documentation where all we're trying to do is save advanced pancreatic cancer patients who only have weeks to live, see if we can extend the survival time by using some natural approaches in addition to the conventional therapies. And it took us 5 years to be able to do that study. We're spending $500,000, by the way, on that study, and the institution is donating the medical services and their facilities for the purposes of this because we both believe we're going to prolong survival in pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, but they fast-tracked the pharmaceutical companies. As sure as I'm sitting here, if that was a major pharmaceutical company, that would have been done in 6 months.
That's 100% correct. If we had the money to run it through the FDA the way the drug companies do, it would have happened very quickly. We needed to stand in line.
And let me say this about he and this organization. They have absolutely no vested interest in this. They're taking $500,000 out of their pocket with no hope to receiving anything for that, just to show that natural methods can save lives. This is commendable. Rather than this man being chased, he should be an American hero. He should be at the White House and in front of Congress receiving awards. And I'm not embellishing this. But again, he's the enemy of the state because he's the enemy of corporate interest.
Very kind of you.
Well, not kind, it's true.
And in the 5 years that procrastination occurs and delays are imposed, people suffer and die.
Well, 40,000 people a year die of pancreatic cancer. And there's solid evidence in the peer-reviewed literature that you can at least give these people an extra year or two. And we've done that with people who have come to us. We put them on good programs, and they've defied the prognoses of their oncologists. So we have a good idea that this study is going to be successful. And it's all through a nonprofit effort. There's no money to be made out of it, but if we can prove it works, then everybody has access to it.
Do you know how many people I know, I've worked with in my 45 years that reverse brain cancer, liver cancer, pancreatic cancer, bone cancer? These are 0 successes. Now, you would think somebody would say, after 60 years of doing this work and not hiding it, but speaking clearly about it, people are alive, they can actually be interviewed on your channel here, that have healed these things, that the top institutes in Europe and the United States have told them, you're going to die, we have the paperwork. Don't you think somebody should come to us and say, let's do research, because we have a policy. Every bit of our records are available to legitimate researchers at any point, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The only people that have come in are the Germans so far. That's it. But we're hoping that Americans in this country, the United States of America, want to know what's happening in their own country.
It is disconcerting and frightful. Bill, you've been through quite a few battles in your career, a lifetime dedicated to this cause. Please share some examples with our audience.
A number of the medications right now that are approved by the FDA, ones that have fewer side effects than others, were first introduced by the Life Extension Foundation. We encouraged our members to get their hands on life-saving drugs because they couldn't wait for the FDA to approve of them. FDA takes much longer than most other countries to approve new medications. So we were the first to introduce metformin, which is an anti-diabetic drug. We introduced it as a way to potentially slow down aging. It has some interesting effects. For those people especially who are unable to exercise, metformin provides some of the benefits of exercise in a pill, basically. It's a prescription drug. You need to have your doctor write a prescription for it, but we pushed that back in 1995. And in 2016, they're going to start a study, we believe, to see if metformin can really slow down aging, 21 years later.
And I'm telling you, commendable work, but do you know when we knew this? It's called glycation. In 1920 and 1930, because a French gentleman called Maillard called it the Maillard effect, where they looked at high protein bound to sugars. It actually kills you and ages you. And so what they're doing is reducing the sugar and prolonging the life. It makes sense.
Before we conclude, Bill, share a final thought with our audience at this time.
I hope the audience today has gotten an education about what they should be doing as far as what they have for dinner tonight, because what they eat has a profound impact on their short and long-term health. And it's never too late to start bringing in healthy eating patterns into your daily routine and purging from that routine the toxic foods that are prematurely aging and killing Americans today.
I should have asked you to tell our audience how they can learn more about the Life Extension Foundation.
The Life Extension Foundation, I'm going to continue to tell people to type into Google walnuts and my last name, which is Faloon. Because I've been a proponent of walnuts for a long time, and I've defended companies who the FDA wanted to shut down because they claimed the walnuts had health benefits. So to get an idea what Life Extension does, just go to Google and type in walnuts and Faloon and put that on your screen, Richard, so people can see how to spell my last name, F-A-L-O-O-N, and read about 200 or 300 different posts from other people who have said, why is the FDA allowed to suppress and censor truthful information about walnuts? And it'll open people's eyes to the real problem out there.
Absolutely amazing. Now you have patients coming from all over the world.
All over, yeah.
How do people find you?
Well, for instance, in the next few days, I'm going to be on a 9-country lecture tour of the world. But again, on the internet, you can find us. So it's at Hippocrates, the father of medicine.com. So it's HIPPOCRATES.com or .org. We're a nonprofit organization. And so thank you for having us today.
Very important. And before we conclude, Bill, you also have a conference coming up, RADFest. Tell our audience about that.
Yeah, it's the Revolution Against Aging and Death in San Diego. That's August 4th through 7th, 2016. And we're expecting a couple thousand people to show up who are seeking ways to reverse biological aging in human beings.
Also important. Thank you so much again, Bill. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you so much.
This concludes our special show for today. Thank you for being with us. I'm Cheryl Martin.